Hello my fellow artists, my name is Hamna, a self-taught artist, and welcome to my channel. Today I'll be sharing 9 super helpful tips I wish I had learned sooner in my artistic journey, and I'll be applying these tips to my new illustration of Princess Rhaenyra. Let's get to it. Line weight is something that I overlooked when starting out, but I could have made a lot of my earlier pieces look a lot more professional if I had just spent a bit more time on it. Line variance is basically making your line art appear either heavy or light depending on certain areas of your illustration. You normally want to make your lines heavier in areas of occlusion, which are areas where two objects touch, resulting in a shadow. In my case here, I've used heavier line weight on her jawline and chin, near her elbow, and folds in the cloth. As a stylistic choice, I've also drawn heavier lines in the overall outline of the character. And here is a before and after look with and without the weighted line art. I cannot paint without first creating a flat base layer. This is something that I find super helpful and important that I wish I'd learned about sooner. Nothing bothers me more than coloring in an object or a character, and once it's complete, realizing since my brush flow or brush opacity was low, there are some parts that are more transparent or having some empty spots. Base layers are a quick fix for this, so I'm using the magnetic selection tool. I find it a lot easier to use than the lasso tool, which is more freehand. And I'm basically outlining the silhouette of my character. I'm going to drop in a base layer. I usually go for something not too saturated, using the bucket tool. From here, you can either apply a clipping mask, which I'll show next, or lock the layer itself and color above that. This will act as your basic silhouette as you add more details to your piece. So let's go ahead and talk about clipping masks. So here we've got a solid circle, and in order to create a clipping mask, I'm going to add a new layer, right click and select create clipping mask, and you'll see that layer with an arrow pointing above the original circle layer. What does that do? Now if I pick a different color and start coloring on top, you'll see that it doesn't go over the line or outside the lines. This is essentially the purpose of a clipping mask. Now, this is great for a number of reasons, and I'll show you here how I've applied it to my character. Above her base skin layer, I've got a clipping mask layer for details, for blushes and any shading. I don't have to worry in case I need to erase some of it. I don't need to worry about it affecting her base skin tone layer. So I find that clipping masks to be very helpful for applying details, especially without worrying about coloring outside the lines or affecting base layers. Alright, the next step is smoothing out the line art, and I apologize, I'm not super familiar with other programs, but here's a quick fix to shaky line art in Photoshop. So we're going to look at this option up here and slide. The larger the number, the more smoothing will be applied. But do keep in mind it can cause a lag when you're making your strokes if the number is too high. So I usually keep it around 15. And here's a before and after using the smoothing option. A simple yet effective tip that I apply no matter what program I'm using involves shading using the color wheel. When I started using this tip, my art was instantly elevated, and in order to pick the right color, the right shading color for a piece, we want to first select the base color. So let's take skin for example, and now here's the trick. Before going down on the color wheel, we're first going to move down on the wheel itself to get a warmer reddish tone, and then from there we're going to select a darker tone. So this creates a more saturated and realistic shade. And here's a before and after adjusting the color wheel, and as you can see, the colors are a lot more vibrant and they work well together. Another simple step I take to level up my illustrations is coloring in the line art. The way that I do that is by first setting a transparent lock to my layer. This will keep any strokes only inside whatever is in that layer. From there, I'll pick a darker shade of whatever I'm coloring. For example, for the skin outline, I'll select with my eyedropper tool the color of the skin. I'll then pick a darker shade, and you all know an efficient way to do that now. And I'll start coloring in the lines. And I do want to mention that this can also be a stylistic choice. So if black line art fits the look that you're trying to go for, then by all means do that. But for me and the types of art that I make, colored line art I feel works a lot better. And here is what it looks like with simple black line art versus colored. What makes an illustration look professional is cohesiveness, and having the subject and its background share the same tones and overall mood. Here are some examples that I've pulled from some of my favorite movies that show this. And this still from Disney's Brave, we've got overall warm tones and lighting of the background hall, which is apparent in the character in focus, allowing all the elements to blend smoothly together. And similarly, we've got the opposite in this scene from Harry Potter, with very bluish grayish tones and the cloudy sky that again matches both in the background and the character. And here are a couple more examples that I'll put on the screen. An easy way for us to apply this to a 2D illustration is using a multiply layer. So I'm gonna go in and create a new layer. Next, I'm gonna apply it as a clipping mask to my characters. So I'm gonna use the bucket tool and fill the entire layer with a warmish color. I'll usually take a darker shade from the image itself. Now I'll play around with the opacity until I get the tone I'm trying to go for. Another thing I'll do to create highlights is creating a new layer and setting its blending mode to linear dodge. I'll pick the color of the lighting, which is a yellowish goldish tone in this case, and outline if there's silhouette where light might be hitting. And here is the before and after. Personally, I can be really forgetful, especially when it comes to learning something new. I found early on that writing my process down step by step is super helpful with easing the workflow. I keep a list of the basic steps that I take for each stage, no matter what the illustration is. And I keep that beside me for reference, just so that I don't forget anything. Even though at this point everything's become habitual, I still refer to that list sometimes. My last tip is not really a technical tip, but a piece of advice that at first took me some time to really believe in, but now is an idea that I fully advocate for. And that is, having fancy gear does not make you a better artist. I've gone from using sketchbooks to multimedia, to using beginner to professional markers and all sorts of digital tablets. And after having the opportunity to trying out all these different mediums since a young age, I realized that no matter how powerful creative tools may be, no matter how large a digital tablet is or how expensive a marker can be, at the end of the day, if my skills are not progressing, then I won't be happy with the results. A skillful artist will be distinguished by their skills and will be recognized whether they've drawn on a fancy tablet or with a pencil on a napkin. That's not to say that great art tools don't help, because they definitely do, and they've helped me. But most of the time, if you're struggling with your art, supplies are not always the crux of the issue. Even nowadays, whenever I get into an art slump or trying to figure out why I'm not progressing in a particular area, I'll close up my tablet and stylus and open up my notebook and pencil and just start practicing. And I find that to be really helpful, getting back to focusing on the fundamentals rather than the tools that I'm using. Thank you all for tuning in today. Now, everything I've shared is my opinion and pretty subjective, and these are things that I found to be beneficial as someone self-taught, and I hope you find some of these advices helpful as well. All right, everyone, never stop learning, and I'll close up the video with the final reveal of my artwork. Thanks for watching.